My father stood up at my engagement party, raised his champagne glass and said, "Let's all be honest, we never thought a man would actually want her." 60 guests froze. My fiancé's hand tightened around mine. My mother looked down at her plate. And I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I walked calmly to the front of the room, opened my laptop, and projected one document onto the wall. By the time I finished speaking, my father wasn't smiling anymore. If you've ever been told you weren't enough by the one person who was supposed to protect you, this story is going to hit deep. Subscribe for more real-life revenge stories where truth speaks louder than cruelty. Now, let me tell you about the night my father tried to humiliate me and why he regretted it before dessert was served. I'm 33 now, but for most of my life, I was the disappointing one. My father, Richard Hale, was a respected financial advisor in our city. Polished, confident, charming in public. At home, he had one hobby: dismantling me. "You're too sensitive. You're not leadership material. Your sister got the brains." If I gained 5 pounds, he noticed. If I got an A-, he questioned it. If I cried, he called it weakness. The thing about emotional abuse is that it's subtle enough to deny. There were no bruises, just a slow erosion of confidence. By 18, I believed I was fundamentally flawed. By 25, I was financially independent, living on my own, working as a compliance analyst in a major firm. But no promotion ever felt like enough, because in my head, his voice still narrated everything. When I met Daniel at 30, something shifted. He didn't see me as fragile. He saw me as capable. When he proposed, I felt joy without fear for the first time in years. But I hesitated to tell my father, because I knew what would come. He'd analyzed Daniel's salary, his background, his family. When we announced the engagement, Dad smirked. "Well," he said, swirling his drink, "let's hope he knows what he's signing up for." That was his version of congratulations. Still, I invited him to the engagement party. Part of me still wanted approval. Isn't that embarrassing? At 33, still craving validation from someone who only gives criticism. 2 weeks before the party, something strange happened. I was reviewing archived financial records at work. Routine audit. And I saw my father's name. His firm had been under investigation 3 years earlier for irregular client transfers. The case had been quietly settled. Internal compliance issue. No criminal charges, but significant penalties. I stared at the file. Unauthorized transfers from elderly client accounts. Temporary adjustments. Funds returned later. Just enough to avoid prosecution. I felt cold. At home, he had spent years calling me careless, irresponsible, weak. And here he was, gambling with retirees' money. I requested public records. Everything was technically legal now, but the settlement documents existed, and I downloaded them. I didn't know what I would do with them yet, but I saved them. The night of the engagement party, the venue was warm and glowing. Fairy lights, soft music, 60 guests, friends, colleagues, family. I wore a simple ivory dress. Daniel looked at me like I was the only person in the room, and for a moment I felt safe. Then my father stood, tapped his glass. The room quieted. He smiled that polished smile. "I just want to say," he began, "that as a father you always worry." Light laughter. "You worry if your daughter will make good choices." More polite smiles. "And honestly, we never thought a man would actually want her." The words hung in the air like smoke. Someone gasped softly. My chest tightened. My ears rang. For a split second, I was 12 years old again, standing in the kitchen while he listed my flaws. Daniel started to stand. I squeezed his hand. "Sit." "Not yet." My father continued. "She's emotional, high maintenance, not exactly easy." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. My mother stared at her wine glass. I felt heat rise to my face, but instead of shaking, I felt steady, because this time I wasn't powerless. I stood slowly, walked to the front of the room. "Dad," I said calmly, "thank you for your honesty." He smirked. I turned to the event coordinator. "Can we connect my laptop to the projector?" Confused murmurs. My father laughed lightly. "What are you doing?" I opened the file, projected it onto the wall. Settlement agreement, Hale Financial Advisory. Date, case number, regulatory body. The room went silent, utterly silent. I faced the guests. I grew up being told I wasn't responsible, that I lacked discipline, that I was weak. I clicked to the next page. Unauthorized transfers, client restitution, penalties. My father likes to call me careless. My voice didn't tremble, but 3 years ago his firm was investigated for moving money out of elderly client accounts without consent. A ripple went through the room. Someone whispered, "Is that real?" I zoomed in on the signature. His. I looked at him. "You taught me that silence protects family," I said quietly. "But silence also protects abuse." His face drained of color. "Turn that off," he hissed. "No," I replied. "For once, no." The room felt electric. My father tried to step forward. "This is private business." "So it was my self-worth," I interrupted. Gasps. Daniel stood beside me now, solid and calm. I continued. "I spent my entire life believing I was not enough, that something was wrong with me. I closed the laptop gently, but tonight I'm done carrying shame that doesn't belong to me." I looked directly at him. "You built your confidence by breaking mine." "Silence. You don't get to humiliate me in public and expect me to protect your secrets in return." A few guests started clapping, slow at first, then stronger. My father's hands trembled. He looked smaller, for the first time in my life, smaller. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He grabbed his coat, and he left. No toast, no control, just exposed. And the most surprising part? I didn't feel victorious. I felt light, like someone removed a weight I'd been carrying since childhood. Here's what I learned. Setting boundaries with family isn't betrayal. It's survival. When someone repeatedly tells you that you're not enough, eventually you start believing it. But worth isn't assigned by the loudest voice in the room. And silence in the face of cruelty doesn't make you loyal. It makes you complicit. That night, I didn't destroy my father. I simply stopped protecting a version of him that never protected me. If this story hit you somewhere personal, like and subscribe for more real-life revenge stories where truth wins. And tell me in the comments, if you were in that room, would you have stayed silent? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Chosen self-respect over fear. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is no.